salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So for reference, the original packet that was given to us is in our board books from November 10th, and that has the salary schedules and information that we're currently living on today.
Right.
What's in your board books today is version 3, and is the proposed version to discuss through this evening. I think so. If we can just do an approval of the agenda, or if are there any modifications we want to make to the agenda? All right, so hearing no modifications to the agenda, we'll go ahead and approve the agenda as created. So the plan for this evening, obviously, the goal of tonight is to answer any and all questions, financial questions. Larry's here for that too. So that when this comes in front of the school board on Thursday, that there maybe additional discussion, but that we are able to hopefully make a decision on Thursday based on the proposal, based on questions that come out of here or follow-ups that come out of here this evening. So with that, I thought we might start on the first page of the salary schedule, which is actually page, thank you, page 7. And have Mr. Gallagher walk us through that and then ask questions per page, if that works for the board. Keeping it kind of organized to go that way, or is there a
Is that what we're doing now?
Yes, unless there's a different, unless
Well,
there's
we didn't
different
approve the
things.
agenda.
Nobody had any modifications.
Oh, so you don't have to approve.
We were.
I forget about that part of it. Yeah.
Do you want to change it?
No.
Does that work for everybody, that we kind of run through it that way and then we can have further discussion as we need to?
That works.
All right, so let's start on page 7 with the administrative proposed salary.
Okay, so as of Madam Chair, at the last time we met and talked, we were able to reach out and grab a whole lot more data. Shirley really helped out with her executive secretary contacts. And so there are some changes to this, too many to highlight exactly each one. But as a whole, I saw the comparisons actually expand. But also there was obviously a pattern, and we've talked about this before, that larger school districts have a higher salary range than your smaller school districts. So I looked at the size of the districts, and we have to keep in mind that we have Learn at Home with us, and that's another 282, I think, students as of today. And our brick and mortar is at 243 as of today from last time I checked. And that expands the size of our district. And so really, if you look at comparisons, if you were to interpolate that into comparisons, you're talking upper 2A, lower 3A is what you're really talking about. But we reached, again, at all levels. Districts that are smaller, districts that are exact same size, districts that are larger, particularly the ones within our competition area. I also did a comparison of the travel arrangements for people, where they're coming from. And we have people coming from Walport, Albany, Corvallis, Philomath, Eugene, Monroe, all those different areas. And that also has a significance in terms of cost to the individual. And as I've had a lot of conversations with staff, staff can manage, some manageable costs, I guess you could say. But sometimes when you have your costs that get so high in terms of travel, it really inhibits one's interest in coming to LC when they live in other communities. So that's part of the analysis also. Each and every one of these cost comparisons fall within, excuse me, each and every one of these salary schedules fall within the cost comparisons as I've identified those. And we tried to keep those down more like a 2A, 3A level. And in some cases, there wasn't hardly any change to what I had originally proposed. In other cases, there was some change. Also, with this newly proposed salary schedule, you'll notice a 3% step and a 2% step. And the 3% is what I originally proposed. The 2% is an option for the board to consider. So what that looks like is like between step 1 and step 2, it's a 3% for the top chart. And then if you're looking on page 7, that's interesting, page 7 of 2. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. But the bottom part is the 2% step. I started them at the exact same level. It's just they'll progress at a slower level with the 2% than the 3% over the steps. I also increased the steps as the board had asked with the administrative salary schedules. Are there, I'm not sure what to really talk to you about, other than that's pretty much consistent throughout the proposal. So there is a choice between a 3% step and a 2% step. And many hours have been spent on this. I would say hundreds of hours, because it's not easy to grab this information from school districts. Examples of some of the districts that we polled, and you have to keep in mind that not all districts operate the same. Every district operates almost completely differently. So some districts, like if you look at special education director on this page 7, some districts don't have a SPED director because they actually contract through the ESD for those services. That's usually more common in your smaller districts than your larger districts. We do have a SPED director, and you know, in terms of a cost comparison, what the ESD would charge for those services as compared to what we're paying for those services now, I would have to see what they would come in at. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was that plus even more for the ESD. That's usually where they come in at, because they have overhead costs too.
What services would we lose or gain by going with ESD over having an employee? I think that's the question for me, is not the pay range so much.
Right. It depends on the position. You know, like I'm going to pick on Lorraine here. Lorraine's an ESD employee. And, you know, we had advertised for a business manager for a while, and we really didn't have any applications of experienced business managers in terms of the skill level. We're just not big enough to attract that. The ESD is big enough to attract that. So we were able to attain Lorraine through an ESD contract. So it just depends. Like with SPED, you have a whole SPED department at an ESD, and they serve the entire region. And so oftentimes there's advantages there in terms of additional resources. It's not just down to one person, although a SPED director to not loop in with the ESD would not be very wise, because there are resources there that we can reach to just through what is called Tier 1, which are available to all school districts. When you look at, you know, building principal positions, you certainly want to have those in building, because those are something that it's not easy to do remotely. Also, we have payroll through the ESD right now. HR could be through the ESD. I'm not sure if he would save any money or not. We would have to, you know, ask them what it would cost. And sometimes you got to be careful, because sometimes your service level goes down because of lack of personability. You know, you're talking about a physical distance. So again, it depends on the person, it depends on the position, depends on the district, what the district needs are. With the SPED director we have right now, she's very highly skilled, and SPED is one of those very litigious environments, and so far she's been able to keep us under wraps in terms of any ODE findings or issues, which that could also result in hefty lawsuits and cost to the district. If I was to jump to page 8,
Well, before we jump,
okay,
I know that the board had asked for an increase in steps to show, so that was completed. Are there other
Mhm.
questions that around the building admin?
What do you
And
mean
the-
by increase in steps? I don't see this number going further down.
You asked for
Lower
additional
to
steps.
start. No, I
Yeah.
asked for this to be lowered in the beginning. Instead of starting at 87, it a little lower for, say, newbies coming right out of school.
right. And I did that.
3,000,
Let me check here.
wasn't it 90 to start with?
See where I find it.
Just seems high.
But 87 is the lower in the comparison realm. Also,
Right. Oh,
So we have 88, 7, and then 87.
do that again, Ryan.
So the original was 88,771.
Yep.
And then the new one's 87 even. The assistant principal went down quite a bit. From 83,676 to 76,368.
Mhm.
So in terms of comparisons, it's not the right one. Oh, I know. In terms of comparisons for administration. We compared with Albany middle school level, Bethel Middle School, Corvallis Middle School, Junction City High, Junction City Elementary, Lincoln County Middle School, Lincoln County Small High School, Monroe, Glide, Fern Ridge, Jervis, Wallowa, and Prospect. It's the data we were able to gather. Principalships. Vice principal, because the smaller school districts tend to not have vice principals. We only had 3 comparisons there. Glide, Fern Ridge, and Jervis. Sped director, Albany, Bethel, which was much larger, Corvallis, Junction City, Lincoln County, and Fern Ridge. So like Fern Ridge starts at 94,000 for sped director. Started at 103,000 for a middle high school principal. Vice principal, they start anywhere from 74 to, let's see, Fern Ridge is 89,000. Glide is 74,000.
Can I get this printed off, please? I'd really like to have this printed off. Is there a printer I can search to?
Yeah, what do you want printed off?
The schedule from November.
From November? Yeah,
Mhm.
let me find it here.
Actually, hold on.
Do you have it?
I just want to have it here.
Okay.
Here. I
gonna say-
sent him an email today asking him to have this in paper form so I could look at it. And he
I
misunderstood.
misunderstood.
So I just
thought it
really
was
want
this
it
you
in
wanted.
paper
So
so I
just
can look at it.
ignore my chicken scratch because they're my notes, but
Thank you. I'm a black and white person. I kind of have to have it.
so I think while you go through that, are you still making the proposal in this that discusses, yeah. So where it has administrative employees, your original suggestion had been about increase in salary scales, which we discussed that later, but also COSA dues paid and then development reimbursement for administrators, since these are non-union staff. What's the cost to the
So-
district for those types of things? And are you still making that proposal?
So notice under administrative employees, and this is the part that I,
It's on page 3, correct?
page 3, that I added, number 3 under administrative employees. Notice the very last sentence there. This is to be approved at a later date as a part of the employee handbook that will outline benefits. I'm just giving you a heads
Thank
up.
you.
It's coming. I do believe COSA it's like a little over $300 per year per administrator. So it just depends on how many administrators you have.
Okay.
It's not a huge expense, but it is a common benefit amongst administrators throughout the state.
In our original one, since the business manager is on this page, do you remember where they fell in the original proposal? It's okay if your answer is no.
Hang on here. I think I have that right here. So the first one was in was it November or December.
It was November 10th.
Okay.
I don't think we have one.
I have one December 8th.
Well, but I don't think we have one for a business manager in the original proposal.
No.
Oh, no, I added that. Well,
Okay.
no, it's there. I had starting at 79. All the way up to, looks like 97.
That's on the original?
I'm sorry, what are we looking at?
We're looking at business manager. I'm looking at the proposal dated December 8th.
I'm looking at the November 10th one.
Yeah.
November 10th. Why am I not seeing it?
So it's got business, but it's got payroll, accounts payable, HR assistant, benefits. It doesn't have like a business manager.
Right, I have it in front of you when I was looking.
Yeah. And then
Oh, yeah, sorry.
that's okay. So we didn't have one in the original proposal. So that's
Yeah,
an
this
add.
one's sideways.
So this is an add.
Yeah. So that's an ad because I think we talked about that, you know, if we ever lost our ESD services with business manager, we want something to have in place.
But this proposal is not approving this does not provide approval for posting this position,
Correct,
correct?
correct. Absolutely. These are just salary schedules. This does not mean we're adding a business manager position. My recommendation is to stay with the ESD for business management for consistency.
Do you know what the previous business manager title was under? Was it under administrator?
It would have been,
I think it was, yeah.
hang on here.
think it's like one of the very last pages.
It would have been under administrator.
Okay.
And based upon the number of days, it was either 240 or 260.
But it didn't have a step range.
There was no step in the first, that's what we're moving
I get
to
you.
is the steps. And no, there's no steps. It was all based upon the number of days in the contract. And at 240 days was 102,000 and some change, and 260 days was 111,000 and some change.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, what other questions do we have on, for this piece of it?
For this piece of it,
Yeah, just
Just the
Just the
administrative.
administrative piece of it.
okay, then I'll wait until the very end because my comparison is about the whole thing, not just the administration.
We can go that route. My goal is that everybody's questions are answered. So if that is what you would prefer to do and start, then go through each page by page, then let's do that.
Well,
'Cause I'd
because-
rather just have more conversation as a group.
So why I wanted this side by side is because I'm looking at the numbers. So the numbers tell me in this one right here, which was the original proposed.
Yep.
or the one we're working on. So there.
That's not our
there's-
current salary schedule, what you're looking
That's
at.
the
So
original
proposed.
That's proposed.
Okay, so it says step 5 is at 99 on this one, 97 on this one, and it's at the 3%.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So,
Right.
so when I look at these numbers and then I go over to these other positions that are not administration,
Mhm.
I see very little step in increase in pay. Sure, it's only 3%, but what I have a problem with is this is thousands of dollars, these increases, where these people are trying to make their bills and pay their bills, and they're hundreds of dollars increases. And as a parent, I would have a hard time seeing my principal get just a number, not what it is, but say a $4,000 increase where my employee in the classroom is getting a $40 increase. So the numbers to me tell me that we are way too admin heavy and not enough money is going to the people in the classrooms. We need more money going to the people in the classrooms, not to administration. That's how I feel. So when I look at these numbers, it is really hard for me to be okay with these increases for admin and not these increases for the other people. So we can't afford to do, of course, for everybody in those numbers. But when I look at these increases at admin and then I look at these other people in our class, I have a problem with that. That's really hard for me to chew on.
But from a business perspective, Deb, this 3% across the board, each of those steps
Mhm.
is a 3% increase. So it's 3% of what the step is.
Mhm.
And there's licensure and education that goes into those admins that are there versus the other places.
I understand that, but what I see is the admins are all getting raises at 3%, and the people below, some are getting cut back and some are getting the 3%, but to me, it isn't enough for the people below admin. Because it's, I mean, talk about minimum wage and how it's not a living wage. And how we cannot bring minimum wage up to a living wage because it doesn't balance out. And I understand all that. But I just have such a hard time because we're so admin heavy.
But we're not going to be.
Right,
I think
We
these-
can't be, we can't
No, that's-
sustain that.
But I think
right.
that,
we're heading that way.
the question we have tonight is, do we have the question tonight of, are we admin heavy, or do we have the question of, are these fair pay ranges for the
Right.
admin?
Right,
I
right.
don't think,
Right.
I'm not disagreeing with you that we're admin heavy.
Right.
Not for even a second.
I agree
My
too.
question is, is this pay scale appropriate for the admin?
Yeah, and I understand that. I just have a hard time with it is all.
So what you're talking about, Deb, is in the formal budgeting process. And
Yeah.
that's part of that supplementary budget that Ms. Sullivan and I are putting together. Plus, we'll be building a budget for next year. And that's when we do look at the number of positions. And yes, we are heading to less admin next year. because we are admin head.
We are admin heavy. And that's why I just look at these numbers and I understand these people go to school and, spend thousands of dollars on education. I went to college and I
Sure.
spent money on my education too. And I understand that not everybody gets that opportunity. And so
Sure.
am I wanting to make minimum wage a living wage? No, because it doesn't work.
No,
that
it
way.
doesn't.
We have to encourage this step, but
Right.
to me, it just seems a little out of balance.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you're wanting to see more money applied to salaries for our classified staff?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd rather see a smaller raise for the admin because they're higher and a higher percent raise for the ones below that are working on their education and coming up the ranks. That's how I feel.
So are you proposing like a 2% for admin and a 4% for classified? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
That would make more sense to me. Yeah. Just because I want these people to come here and work
Mhm,
and take care of our kids in our community
mhm,
and be okay when they walk in the door.
mhm. I understand. And you know that a lot of these were increased because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I found it embarrassing to drive through Philomath and see that McDonald's workers were earning more than some of our staff right now.
And there
And
are.
that's why they need to come up.
And so I'm sorry, but I feel that if admin need to take a less of an increase so that the others can, that
So you're looking at the amount, not necessarily the percentage.
I'm looking at the percentage. I'm looking at the percentage, which
Okay.
comes out to the amount, but I'm
Right.
looking at the percentage. To me, it just seems so high of a percentage for the admin. Of course, because their pay is higher, it seems so much, but I'd rather see more of that percentage given to the smaller position.
Understand?
So
So we're talking about,
I understand.
no, I want to throw an added component in there because we're right in the middle of discussing, teacher salaries too, and they're not on this HR, like, they're not a
Right.
part of this conversation.
Right.
Right.
But I think in the back of our minds, although we're talking about classified and admin roles, I think we have to have in our minds too, what does that look like for our teacher staff too, or our teaching staff also as we.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
we don't want to get ourselves in the position again where we give a 4% increase to classified staff. And now we're overpaying, now we're compensating at a higher rate for somebody over a teacher's salary. Does that
I
make
agree.
sense?
Yep.
So that was just not just a thing to keep in mind as we kind of go through some of these things.
Agree.
Is that common to like put your salary schedule, like to put your admin on a 2% step increase and then put your classified on a 4%? Is that up to the board to make that decision and for options in a?
I've seen it before. It's not as common most of the time that, and keep in mind, we don't have a classified union here. But most of the time, the way that districts operate is they first negotiate their certified contract, which, they negotiate, let's just throw a number out there, 3% COLA increase. Then usually the other groups, the classified, confidential, and administrative come in and say, well, if you're giving them a 3%, we would want a 3% also. So they look at it as equality. Now,
Mhm.
to Deb's point, I get it. I'm a former math teacher. I get that there's more money in a 3% for a higher salary than there is a
Mhm.
lower salary. I get that.
I just think
But I
about
have
options.
seen differentiation there, yes. Oftentimes that differentiation is to try and, because sometimes when you do the 2%, 3% over 10 years, you get either behind or ahead in your salary schedules and you got to readjust. And sometimes I've seen it to be a 1% for this group and a 4% for this group to try and readjust so it's more equal. I've seen that happen.
I like your idea though with the different thought processes or different options on how we do increases. So.
Yeah, because I just want to look at it from every point of view for our school, because I just feel that the classified are the ones in our classrooms
Mhm.
with those kids.
Sure.
And I mean, speaking from my own experience with my nephew, I know what they go through and it's
Mhm.
tough.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so I just think they earn it too.
I could easily create a 4% on that classified step increase. That
Well,
wouldn't be hard to do.
I think the hardest part, well, I guess we need to do that with our budget because our numbers are really gonna change for next year in our budget. And I think
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
the other thing that's rolling in my head is
Mhm.
the difference is a lot.
Mhm.
And so,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not against giving people raises. I just don't want to put ourselves in a position that
Mhm.
we're in trouble.
Yep, and that's the budgeting process that we'll be going through, absolutely. And at that point, we'll be talking about positions that we want to preserve and positions that we're gonna have to let go.
Yeah.
Because we know that with the lack of enrollment at Northern Home, it's affecting the budget. That's
By a
just a
lot.
given, by a
Yeah.
lot. Plus, the discussions at the state level in terms of increasing the state school fund is only 2.3%. We know that's way under just costs, rolling up the costs. So no, we're gonna have some real tough decisions to make. But the very beginnings of it is to set your salaries. And so when you do have a business manager, we have one through the ESD right now, but when we do go out to hire somebody in a business manager position, we've already got that salary schedule set. That's all we're trying to do here. So no, this is not approving any additional positions. It's not approving any cuts in positions yet, but we need to go through and evaluate this number and the rest of the story. Kind of like Paul Harvey. You guys remember Paul Harvey?
Oh, yeah.
Here's the rest of the story. The rest of the story is once the board sets these salaries, then Lorraine and Roxy Smallwood and I, we're going to be meeting with each individual employee, making sure they're properly placed on the salary schedule according to, like with the teacher salary schedule, it's education plus steps. With this right here, it's steps. How many years of experience do you have as a building principal, or how many years of experience do you have working in a school as an IA,
Mhm.
or even it could be even a cook. We want to make sure we're accurate on that because we've noticed there's a lot of discrepancies there. I think the process was not consistent.
I agree.
And I want to make sure that we're putting people appropriately where they need to belong. Plus, there's other paperwork that we have them fill out and give them their job descriptions and give them their work calendars, because different people are on different work calendar schedules. And so there's clear expectations across the board, and that's kind of like phase 2 of this. And in the meantime, Lorraine and I are building the supplemental budget. We're also going to be starting on the budget for next year. As things progress, and then we'll be making those staffing type positions. That's going to be the tough part because we have to have a balanced budget.
Yes.
So I have a question on that. It's not a surprise that we've talked about being overstaffed from the very beginning of this school year,
Yep.
not just on the admin side.
Yep.
In general.
Agreed.
So whatever number gets approved, what's the next step? Because we're still overstaffed. Well, what is the analysis step to look at staffing at that point and things like that? Because why wouldn't we look at staffing first before approving these? Does that make sense? Why does looking at the staffing, the FTE counts come after approving this?
Because these figures will be more definitive. Plus, we have them placed where they're appropriately placed. And then we have more of a definitive number in terms of if we cut or rift a certain position, we would know how much that would save us. Right now, we have things all over the board. And, I hear you in terms
But
of
I'm
cutting back first and then doing the salaries. I don't think we're going to be as accurate if we do it that way, but I it could be a strategy.
so I guess that is my why is that your strategy is my question.
Kind of a linear thinker. I guess it's a personal preference. I just feel like this is the first step. And I've also consulted with other HR people and they said, yeah, that's your first step is to reset your salaries. It's a common practice.
So then you can have your supplementary budget and then you make the decision, sorry.
Yes, with the supplementary budget, we'll be able to make decisions in terms of, gee, do we need to cut back this year? Or can we hold off until cutting over the summer? But we all know that a cut is coming. We have to face that because of the lack of enrollment. And I'm pointing at Learn at Home. It's not their fault. You know, we've seen a decrease in online programs throughout the state as we were going post-COVID. But we all know that there's cuts coming. What those cuts will look like, that's a good question. We need to go through that process. There's also contractual language in the collective bargaining agreement that we have to follow in terms of the union, of notifying them that, hey, we're probably going to be cutting back on some positions. So I'm seeing the cutbacks kind of in two phases is what I'm guessing. And I'm going to emphasize the word guess right now because I don't have the budget figures yet to definitively tell you what we need to cut and what we don't. I think we all have some good ideas, like you talked about heavy administration. Got it. But I can say that there's other areas we're heavy in
Mhm.
and that we're still discovering. I even discovered one today. It's like, well, that's a head scratcher. Why do we even have this? And so it's things like that that we're going to have to go through and figure out and trim the fat, but keep the core because we can't let it negatively affect the classrooms. That's the most important part is what happens in the classroom.
Well, I guess my biggest concern is if we wait too long to trim the fat.
Mhm.
That's my biggest concern.
We're targeting February with the supplemental budget and we should have some answers for you at that meeting.
Okay.
And we're just a couple of weeks away from that.
Okay, that was my biggest thing. That's what I kept looking at in my mind and
Sure. Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, how long can we continue and keep our doors open? That's my biggest question.
That's the biggest
Yeah.
question.
Mhm.
Yes,
And I don't want these doors to close tomorrow and I don't want them to close next week.
correct.
And I'm really concerned we are in trouble right now
Mhm.
and we're behind the 8 ball. We're behind on what we needed to get done.
Mhm.
So I feel like we're forced to get this approved if that's the route we're gonna go.
Mhm.
We don't have time to wait and redo it 3 more times.
Well, yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
bottom line.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, tell me, but I don't think I'm off.
I think you're right, Robert. We need to start taking some actions here. And
So,
these are not fun.
No, not fun
These
at
are
all.
not fun.
But a lot of us have kids that we'd like to see graduate here.
Yep.
And if that's the bottom line for me.
Yep.
It's about kids.
Yep.
It's not
Mhm.
about us. We shouldn't be here in this spot anyways, but we are.
We are.
mhm. So are we financially making things now? Are we at least breaking even? Or are we going backwards?
That we will know in the supplementary budget. If I was to take a guess, I'm gonna use that word guess again. We're behind the 8 ball, like Robert said, because of the lack of enrollment at Learn at Home.
Yeah.
When you go from staffing for 500 kids versus 282, there's some money that didn't show up that we were counting on.
Because looking at our money right now, we're operating on 12.9 as the budget, but we're really only getting 9.2 or something like that, right?
I don't remember the figures. I'd have to defer to Lorraine. Is that about right?
That's a lot of money.
So what
That's over 3
what are
million.
we spending a month? Pretty close to $1 million
What are we spending? What on?
for bills and everything.
Bills and payroll and
And just the, and if we're $1 million a month, we can't do that.
no. Well, that's why I said our budget, I was looking at the numbers today, actually, trying to refresh everything in my mind. And what I saw was we're operating on 12.9, but we're getting 9.2.
That's
then-
if we get it all.
Yeah,
Everything we
yes.
get, we all get the
Mhm.
same OSBA stuff.
Mhm,
It's all negative.
Yeah,
mhm.
and it doesn't look like we're gonna have any more help from our government now either,
Mhm.
from what I'm reading.
So, I mean,
It's,
Education's on the back burner yet again.
yeah, I don't know. It's hard to predict. I've seen this many times.
Right.
Where they go in low and then they settle somewhere in between. The legislatures go in low, the organizations like OSBA and COSA and OEA come in
Right.
high, and they settle somewhere in between. I've seen that time and time again.
Yeah, but I don't want to have our britches hanging out there for somebody to pull off
Correct.
us.
Correct. That's why we want a good, healthy cash carryover
Yeah.
to help with
Okay.
those dips and doogies.
I will share that I think one of the things that I have heard as a concern is not wanting to really change the structure of this school either.
Right,
Wanting to keep this school at a K through 12
right.
rather
Mhm,
than
mhm.
yes.
a K through
Yes.
8. You know,
Correct.
that's a desire I hear from the community.
Mhm.
I think a little bit of the reality, and Robert, I think maybe this speaks to some of the points you've talked about. We're not Philomath. We can't pay at
Right,
Philomath's
no.
rate.
Correct.
So unfortunately, if people make more money in Philomath than they make here, then that's a choice they have to make economically for themselves.
Correct.
But if we want to keep the doors open and serve the community and the student population the way we have been, we have to get ourselves back to a balanced place in the salary schedule.
Yes, thank you. And then
Not pay
balanced-
cuts, not pay raises, but balance,
Balanced.
right? Is that
That-
a fair way to
That
put
that
that?
produces stability amongst your workforce is a balanced salary schedule.
Well, and it doesn't, I mean, yes, we have our learn at home, but it doesn't really seem right that we're looking at our numbers for a 3A school, because we're really not a 3A school.
But are we in the sense of that the amount of student populations that we have to serve
Correct.
hit that? So, I
Yes.
mean, we still can't pay at that level necessarily all the
Right.
time.
Right.
But I'm gonna pick on like some of the RTI assistants and things like that, because we've talked about that.
Mhm.
How many we need in just this brick and mortar is less than maybe how many we need to serve the entire student population and that assistance and that. So
Mhm.
they have to serve more people, so then that pay should
Mhm.
reflect that side of it.
Correct. Well, I guess my point was, we have 260 kids in our school, and that's what we need to operate in our school, because our principal isn't policing, so to speak, the kids that are learn at home.
No, not our building principal, but your superintendent is, your business manager is, your HR person is. I mean, all those people are spread across brick and mortar and.
Well,
But we have the staffing for learn at home, and we have the staffing for
Mhm.
brick and mortar. So it seems a little off balance to me when, if you were doing all of your staffing for the brick and mortar for your learn at home too, then that would make more sense to me. But if you're having staffing for your learn at home, then your brick and mortar isn't really affected by your learn at home.
Actually, we are quite a bit. Anywhere from like personnel issues to payroll, to budget, to occasional student discipline, to, I think of a lot of areas, registration.
So how many
That is-
learn at home personnel do you have? Don't you have a learn at home principal?
Yes, we do. And
Okay, so
keep in
they would
mind-
deal with the learn at home people.
Yeah.
Children.
Mhm.
Not our brick and mortar.
But you have one superintendent for both. I'm
Right.
just using me as an example.
Right, but
Yeah.
my point was, most principals deal with the problems, and then the principal comes to you.
Mhm.
Not all the kids from learn at home, but the
Correct.
principal
Correct.
deals with you.
Correct.
And so to me, it's different,
Mhm. It
because
is.
the kids aren't here to
Well,
come to you.
and a whole different thought, learn at home, as we knew it, to my understanding, will never be the same as it was.
No,
Can't happen.
no,
Correct.
because of COVID.
So it's going to stay like a K3,
Yes.
maybe higher. And it's not going to produce the astronomical amounts of money that it has in the past,
Correct.
ever again. It
Correct.
can't do it.
There's,
Just so that's a knowledge that's out there. It'll never happen.
So we're making a lot of changes in Learn at Home, and we'll be bringing you up to speed on those changes in due time. We just have to be careful how we announce. them.
Yes,
But yes,
but
you're right.
it's a
Learn at Home is gonna
dollar,
be-
it's a dollar
Mhm.
thing for us
Yep.
that's been the candy jar,
Correct,
and it's done everything,
correct.
Mhm.
and we'll just leave it at that. It can't happen anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
Well-
not to that level,
No.
not to that
And
level.
that was kind of our point before about can brick and
Brick
mortar,
and mortar has to run itself.
yes, without the learn at home.
Mhm.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
with what we have working right now, I think we'll be able to achieve that.
What what are we at, brick and mortar?
243.
No, yeah,
243, so that's roughly 6 million? 6.5?
Point to
With
Lorraine on
all,
that one.
with all your added and your 240 and all your added, it's gotta be up around 5 or 6 million, maybe a little more. Yes, so,
Mhm. Okay. Okay, so we're back to this, our pay schedule.
okay,
So I know we kind of keep veering off, but what,
It's
so
okay.
what, to me, what it is we can't put our brick and mortar handling our online because we have our online stuff. So to me, trying to pay at a 3A school level doesn't make sense to me.
I was only using 3A as a comparison, but
Okay.
yes, I completely agree with you.
Is there a point on the salary schedule that we are paying at a 3A level?
Well,
I mean, I
Let's
think
see.
that might be something to look at.
I kind of read you a list
Sorry.
of the comparisons,
Just a hard.
and
bone
I'm
to
gonna look
chew
at
on, I
Bart and
think.
say, Bart, give me some names of 3A. Give me some names of 3A. Did you hear my list earlier?
I don't think he was in here.
So where's the list? No.
Okay,
Junction City.
Junction City,
City's 4A.
Yeah.
Monroe's 2A. Okay,
Okay.
so, I can share with you the figures, district to district. But it's a very inconsistent comparison because every district's structured differently.
Well, and we're structured so differently than we used to be.
Mhm.
That's our
Mhm.
biggest issue. I mean,
Mhm.
business manager. I go back to Gwen, of course.
Mhm.
She evidently was the monster because she did it all.
Mhm.
And we don't get that
Mhm.
for one person.
Mhm.
And that's huge.
Mhm.
And
You, when
that,
you,
that one person, this was years ago, was paid substantially less than the lowest step.
so when that, excuse me, when that happened, we didn't obviously have Learn at Home.
No, well, I gotta guess it was sometime pretty close to when
Oh,
it all
was?
split up,
Okay,
Well, if
because,
you're looking at time frame
Yeah.
wise, it was the retirement of that business manager that you're discussing it.
right,
Kate, she left when the previous superintendent came into the building.
So that was 11 years ago.
Mhm.
actually, she would left before that because one came in before that and then the next rollover.
So it's been at
And then
least
it,
12
then
years. or
it,
13
then
years.
it
Okay, so
split
12
up on the
years, 12,
third
13 years.
rollovers when it,
Yeah.
that I know it, that it split into
Yeah.
Okay.
do we remember how
many
many,
different ways.
do you remember how many students we had at the time?
100 and some.
It was down pretty low.
Yeah,
But no, when the
65.
previous two were here, we were still pretty loaded for a while. Heck, Ryan was in school.
mhm,
There was quite a few kids.
mhm.
And he's old now.
Yeah.
Two
260. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
So I think that's a good point,
So I mean,
Again-
I think this is doable,
but I think this
but
goes
it's
back
not
to,
gonna be fun.
but it goes back to FTE counts, right?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
so if I'm hearing you correctly, and I'm gonna take the hit for this one,
Go ahead.
and if I'm wrong, then correct me, but it's not these salary ranges that are the problem. It's the amount of people that we
It's
have
the
It's the
hired.
FTE.
Absolutely.
Yes,
And so what,
FTE.
yes.
Do we know what our FTE is? How many FTEs?
I have that, here's a question also.
I don't have that off the top of my head. Lorraine, can you look that up really quick?
Because with
So, I
these
mean-
salary ranges, they could be very reasonable,
Yes.
but only one person is at 3.
Correct. That's my
Right, right.
point.
Is that
yes.
your,
I
okay,
like
Right.
that one.
That's it.
is that,
Yes.
Right. Right,
Yes.
but
there
in
we
order
go.
to know if you even need 1 versus 3,
right,
or what that savings even does for the district,
right,
they all have to at least be paid the same, because right now that's not happening.
Correct.
right.
Okay,
There we go.
And as we keep in mind, we've been in a hiring freeze for a while. And as people move on, we are absorbing from within. So suddenly a person that's only been doing these 2 things is now going to be asked to do 3, 4, or even 5 things. So it just adds more to their plate.
It's kind of, I just gotta say, it's kind of a small school deal. Either you fit in it or you don't.
I agree.
And
Mhm.
You always wear multiple hats. in this
yes,
business.
you absolutely do. And
Mhm.
true, it has to be about the kids, but we gotta keep the damn thing open before it's
well, because I'm having so much fun
beep it.
also. I think it's important that as a board, we eat a little bit of crow. We approved the pay
Yes.
ranges
Yes,
that were out of, I'll just use the word compliance, but out of
balance.
balance. So
But we were also fed misinformation.
I'm just
So,
saying, it
I'm with
also
you.
is important, I think, as
It-
part of these decisions may be that we are accountable and eat the crow and
And
Yes,
as, and,
absolutely.
and as you
It's
approve this and move on, it doesn't mean you can't come back and readjust.
Right.
I mean, that can always happen.
so can I ask can I talk about an option possibly that hasn't been considered
Sure,
for staff that are losing? So as you go through this and you say staff are losing pay,
some staff are,
some
yes,
staff are losing pay.
yes. Some staff are.
Has it ever been an option or a thought process that says, okay, this staff member, this year, we need to cut. The pay range looks like this. This is what the new salary schedule is, but has a board ever said, but we won't cut an individual more than 6% in 1 year?
You can certainly
I'm
consider
just
that.
asking, I don't know.
I think you can
I don't know.
consider that,
Mhm.
And
but
then,
I'm
we
just throwing out
have
a
so
number
many
too.
people, and I don't know how you make the breaks. But okay, we choose to only cut the 6%.
Mhm.
That might be either, that might be 2 jobs.
It-
Because that's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at is when we're cutting percentages, when we're giving raises, we're looking at who we're going to have to lay off. And this is how it was worded to me when I was on the board before.
Mhm.
It's very hard to have to lay people off.
mhm.
It's extremely hard.
So say your first part of that again, because I don't think I totally connect the dots.
If you give someone, give a tier 6%,
Decrease.
we may, oh, decrease.
That's
Yeah,
what-
talk
sorry,
about
Okay,
sorry.
well, that'll
So
work.
let
That'll
me-
work better.
okay,
We
but-
might
but
keep,
I'm-
we
but
might
I'm-
keep 2 if we do that.
What I'm thinking is for the staff
Yes.
that are being decreased,
Right.
when somebody has to walk into an office with Lorraine and Mr. Gallagher and they say, okay, the salary schedule is this, but the board approved this salary schedule,
Right.
you would fall at a 12% decrease, but the board also said, we're not gonna cut somebody less than more than 6%.
I like that idea.
So then we're saying, is there still a need for reevaluation? Maybe the board also says we have to freeze the cost of living if they're this percentage over the top
Right.
step. You know what I mean? Because we can do
No,
that
I
too. We
like
can
that
say,
way better.
you're red circled at the top step. We have to freeze cost of living for you also.
Yeah,
Maybe that's what that looks like, but I think there's other options besides just saying, well, you get a 15% pay cut this week, but you got a 6% raise over here, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe that does a little bit to buffer that. I don't know.
Well,
Board
and
can
like I
consider that.
said, instead of losing people, you may keep a few more if we can do that.
yeah. Well, and the other part of that is, at the end of every school year, their contracts are renegotiated, right? For most of them,
Kind of, but not
Or-
really.
Contracts.
contracts,
For non-certified,
right.
yes.
So if they fall into that category, then, maybe they renegotiate their position. I don't know.
Do they
Well,
get to
it'd be,
negotiate?
it'd be,
Their contract
it'd
with
be
them.
according to the salary schedule,
Yes.
the board of salary schedule.
Yes,
And benefit package that the board would have to approve. Yes,
Are you saying exempt staff? I didn't understand.
well, I was just talking staff that's not that's a contract, not like salaries, like teachers' salaries, not them.
So like principals, administration, is that what
no,
you're
those
talking
are
about?
No.
certified.
And classifieds.
Classified don't contract, do they?
No,
No.
We don't have contracts. for
No.
right,
classified.
so
So
we're talking
it's
about
not
non-certified.
really a
Yeah.
contract for-
Mhm.
So exempt employees,
yeah.
non-rep. But not classified. Sorry.
But they're not exempt. They're hourly.
Hourly employees.
Keep in mind, we don't have a classified union.
Right. So like, I mean,
So
how
it's
I
in-
understand classifications of employees would be classified, certified,
Mhm.
and non-rep.
I see.
That's
would
how
be-
I understand.
For us, it'd be classified and non-rep.
Okay.
But keep in mind that admin is certified.
But you don't negotiate with the certified team, do you?
With the union, you do, certified union.
Administrators are part of the certified.
No, they're usually their own group. But they are certified and there's certain state laws that protect their jobs in certain accords. Like they're not just a year-to-year employee. There's,
Oh, right.
there's laws that pertain to that very much treat them like a certified teacher. But yet they're not a part of the certified union.
Right.
Am I
Well,
helping?
I mean, when I think of non-rep, I think of exempt, meaning there's no overtime. There's, that's a certain category of employee.
See, I'm thinking about confidential, non-exempt, so they're hourly, but they're the confidential level. And so it's a qualification in the Boley law. I could show you. And so,
Okay, sorry.
But yeah,
I didn't
it's
mean to-
okay.
No, I feel like we need a
Yeah.
table of definitions,
Yes.
honestly, so
Yeah,
thank you.
it's- yeah.
I think we're gonna have to move.
Go ahead, Larry.
Move what? So we're at 1,000,005.
No, FTE counts.
Oh,
FTE.
FTE.
105.
Okay.
Roughly.
Does that
Yeah.
seem like a lot for our school?
Is that learn at home? Actually, is that learn at home and that's everybody?
Yes, everybody.
Does that seem like a lot?
Yes.
Seems like a lot for our little tiny school.
It's way a lot.
But keep in mind, we staff learn at home for 500 kids.
583, right? Right.
Yeah,
We
something
ha-
like that. I don't know exactly.
Learn at home is at, sorry,
Right now, learn at home is 282.
Do you have,
Oh,
a-
yeah.
do you-
oh, okay.
do you have a
a
for the
breakdown.
brick and mortar?
If you could before our next meeting, that would be really great. You don't have to do it right now unless you want to. Okay.
So. Can
Oh,
I ask a
s-
question that's not related to this, but it's related to
No.
this? But it's different, but I'm
Kidding.
changing the
I'm
subject,
kidding.
so I
Yeah,
wanted,
please.
I don't
Joking.
know. Can
Yeah,
I,
go ahead.
what is the contract for teachers? The dates?
174, right?
174, that's their dates. How many?
Because keep in mind, we're a 4-day school week. So
How many
5,
school days are there? Any?
160.
So 163.
So I have 163 days for the school year, which is where we have our transportation at is 163. Sorry, you go
Okay.
ahead, Larry. You know more than I do.
Oh, transportation is 158. And that's, and then you move up to 174 for teacher calendar. 174 it includes holidays and extra. And so this is
like
Education.
Thanksgiving break,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Christmas break.
So it's 5,000, how many hours?
Another day, that's another discussion.
Here, you can have that back. now.
Thank you. You're welcome. Seared in your brain.
Well, and I
Um,
have it here, but I just needed paper.
I guess, so, I asked that question to ask, there's some variations on here. So confidential hourly, it says 220 to 260. So they're gonna be above the stacked or the calendar days.
It depends on how many days you need for them. Like right now, we're very heavy in the workload for those people because of all the resets that we're having to do.
Okay,
Whether it's board policy reset, HR reset, moving to synergy from our student information system. We got a lot of irons in the fire. Once all this stuff is reset, you're not going to need that many in the future.
Okay.
And, but that will have to be a decision on a later date.
so,
So
Um,
keep in mind, I'm going to point out the difference again. These are
Yeah.
salaries. This is not positions.
no, I understand.
She's looking
I'm looking
days.
at days. I'm looking at the days that we're looking at paying them and things like that.
Mhm.
But, so the days can be adjusted based on your decision, correct?
Based upon need and based upon the position. I mean, you have to meet.
But
a
does it have to
certain-
be decided, sorry, does that have to be decided in the beginning of the year, or is it throughout the year that it can be increased or reduced?
It can be throughout the year on an as-needed basis for your support staff. Keep in mind, the board sets an instructional calendar every spring for the following year. And that instructional calendar is built upon the Division 22 standards of minimum instructional time. And it varies based upon the grade level. And that's how we build our instructional calendar. And that's what ends up in the 174 days for the teacher contract. And, you know, usually your building principals are 200 to 220. Usually, you know, like a business manager and superintendent are 240 to 260. That's usually where those things come from. I did identify some ranges in some of these positions because I anticipate that, you know, we may not need a certain position to be 260 in 3 years from now, as an example. But you want flexibility there to be able to make those decisions. And yes, the superintendent can make those decisions and recommend things to the board as needed.
I asked all those questions to ask another one that is now not in my brain, so I'll come back to it, I suppose. Sorry.
You've nothing to apologize for. It's good discussion. This is quite complicated.
Oh, I know what so I asked all those questions because I know that we're heavily staffed in some areas and we have a lot of work that needs to be done. How are we tracking the completion of the work that needs to be done? Because right now we have all of these things, synergy. Are we tracking like we're a percentage complete? We're behind schedule in completing that. We're ahead of schedule. I think
You'll see a
so.
report.
Data-driven analysis and that of, you know, mid-year, we should be able to cut this position. So we're only going to contract you through December.
Mhm.
You know, your contract only goes that many days. I guess.
You'll see a report from me at Thursday's meeting that will talk about just that. Remember that district priorities list that I
Yes,
shared with you? Well, that's exactly what I've been working on.
thank you.
And there's going to be a lot of progress that we'll be able to look back and say, hey, we're pretty much done with that. But you'll also see the other areas that we still have a lot of work to do.
I think outside of, again, having a balance, we need to also be able to go, we're not going to turn a blind eye to where we need to make that
Correct.
cut. So that
Correct.
happens.
Correct. Correct.
Need some-
No.
So we can't come to a decision tonight because we can't
Right.
vote on
Right.
things, but would it be beneficial if we threw out different thoughts and options on how this got approved, like I said, the thing I said, of, well, maybe we don't cut more than 6%. And if you're red circled and you're above the top step, you don't get a cost of living until this is renegotiated. Like, are there other thoughts that the group has on different ways to approve this that not only benefits the school, but benefits the employees?
I could do whatever you guys would like to see. I mean, I heard the 4% and the 2% thing
Yep,
earlier.
the 2% and the 4% thing, what was a big thing for me.
Mhm.
I would consider also that maybe we look at transportation at 2% because they're much higher already than anybody else around us. And we did that to retain and we want to retain.
I agree
But
with
we
that.
may have to do 2% to stay in a safe space until we get things in it. Does that make sense? Like,
So I'm hearing transportation 2%, classified 4%. We're talking steps. This
yes,
has nothing to do with COLAs.
Correct.
steps, yes.
Steps.
We haven't addressed any COLA stuff,
Right.
correct?
I'm hearing, no, that's gonna be later on in the year.
Okay.
And that'll be, we'll be making those decisions after we have more definitive budget figures, so we know what we can afford and what we can't. Admin, I'm hearing 2%, is that correct?
Yes.
And then we have the confidential. The confidential, non-exempt. It's like your board secretary and HR person, things of that nature. You guys want to throw a figure at me on that one?
I would
I'd
say
say
2%.
2%.
All right,
So my train of thought with the 4% was the employees that are in our classrooms with our kids that are doing the job with our kids.
Mhm. Understand?
So, Deb, just so I'm clear, when you say that thought process. All the lines are blurring together at this point. Sorry, guys.
It's
And I
okay.
keep flipping too and making notes here, and making notes there.
I've looked at this for every day for 6 months and I still see anomalies here. and there. Like, oh, I hadn't
How
thought
often
about
do
that.
salary schedules get reviewed?
Usually, once you have a balanced salary schedule system, you can just review them once every year. And it's usually just a COLA increase that you negotiate with the groups.
I got you.
Yeah, if things are in order, the way I remember it is you'll have groups for each section that will come to us.
So Deb,
I don't know if I heard you guys, but you asked non-exempt employees at 2%.
we said confidential and admin.
I heard non-exempt.
Confidential, non-exempt is a classification. And you'll see that on. So you, on page 8, you have 2 areas there. You have confidential exempt, and then confidential non-exempt is your hourly. So I guess I'm gonna ask clarifying question on that. Is it both of those areas that you're looking at for 2%?
No.
I'm
all.
looking, oh,
Oh,
you go with your thought first.
my thought was all.
And my thought is executive board assistant, executive assistant, admin assistant. So add both admin assistants and executive assistant is a 2%. That was my thought process. The other ones,
So those 3 areas.
those 3. So it wouldn't be a whole group. So I
Okay.
don't know how that works into a salary schedule. 'cause-
I can make that adjustment.
My thought is, well, we don't, the technology coordinator, a maintenance supervisor, and a transportation supervisor all have a direct impact on our students. Whether or not they're in the classroom, they have a direct impact on how our students function within the school on a daily basis.
Mhm. So I'm hearing keep the technology coordinator, maintenance supervisor, transportation supervisor for 3%. Because that's what is currently on this. 3% step.
Wouldn't go below that, but I'm looking at also your comparison ranges too, to kind of see where they're falling in that too.
So just to clarify again, I want to
You're
make
good.
sure I'm very, very cognizant of what you're wanting. You're recommending, and Deb, I want you to chime in too, is 2% for executive board superintendent assistant, 3% step for technology coordinator, 3% maintenance supervisor, 3% transportation supervisor, 2% administrative assistant to district office, and 2% administrative assistant to sped director. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, so in my opinion, the
That's
tech
the option I gave.
coordinator, the maintenance supervisor and transportation, they fall under admin.
They're not licensed admin,
Right.
they're supervisors.
Right.
And there's a difference in both,
Yes.
but they are supervisors. So they evaluate employees.
8. So I was still at 2% for those positions myself. Because they're in the
So you already have a,
supervisory management.
you already have a 2% schedule for all of them at the bottom of page 8 and top of page 9.
Yes.
So I think that's
That's,
the
yeah.
difference you guys are gonna have to make, is deciding between those two models. And you don't, I don't think you have to decide it tonight.
No, I think it's an option, right? So
Yes.
those are options we're discussing. So
Correct.
the
Correct.
option,
I could calculate those options.
Well,
And you can
they-
see,
They are calculated in this, correct?
just
Because
the
this is a
2%.
2% and this one's at the 3%.
Yes, yeah, so it's already,
And
it's
so
right
it's
there.
already calculated.
Yeah,
So
it is.
that's it. Take a mistake out.
Again, there's no decisions being made, just
Mm-mm.
you're throwing at me options for me to develop in the tables for Thursday's meeting.
Correct. So technology.
so I'm sorry, technology coordinator, just so I'm clear, also, we do not have a technology coordinator. This is another one of those positions that if we needed one.
No, we actually do. It's Nathan Roberts. He's halftime tech coordinator and he's halftime teacher.
Okay, now I just don't understand. I thought that would be a stipend, not a position.
We have been paying him with multiple stipends. That has
Okay.
been the district practice, which we're trying to move away from.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would that look like without,
Stipends.
what would that look like? Hold on. For, so now I gotta get away from a name because that's not what I was going for.
Sorry, I
Sorry.
probably shouldn't have used the name.
Um,
but
So what would that look like then for a teacher that took on a component of a position? How does that get worked out? Because they're under the teacher, a union or they're under a union
Mhm.
position and contract.
You just place them as halftime for each. So they're halftime as a teacher and then halftime as a technology coordinator. It's not a
Okay.
stipend that you would add to like a CBA, like we're in negotiations right now.
So the stipend just wouldn't exist any longer.
And that's one of the discussions that we need to have with the union is, say something happens and we need more teaching out of the person I'm gonna say unnamed. And, and so we would need to go back to stipend and we negotiated an agreement with LBL ESD to provide more technology support. Then you would want to be able to reach to a stipend at that point.
Right.
And that would be a part of union negotiations and discussion we would need to have with them. So we have that flexibility. So it's
So-
in place. It's kind of like the business manager component. So it's in place.
Okay, so really it would be a 120 technology coordinator. Am I correct?
Mhm. Yeah.
And is that what you feel the district needs, is a 120 technology coordinator?
Right now, it's what we have and yeah, we keep them quite busy.
But I'm just like, but when I look at this and I look at, because that person's serving Learn at Home and the district,
Mhm.
correct?
Oh,
Brick and
yes.
mortar.
Oh, yes. That's another one of those positions that serves both capacities.
But this salary schedule is budgeting at 240, but what you're
This is not
saying,
budgeting.
sorry, the
This is
salary
just,
schedule is setting at 240.
yes, but so be half of that,
So the pay in these steps would also then be half. of that.
half,
Thank you.
yes.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So then my
Yes.
question is, being that we're redoing all of this and setting up the job descriptions, do we have to post that job? Because really, it's a new position, is it not?
Mm-mm. No, we've had technology
But he's
coordinator.
as a stipend, not as hired as a. So he's a teacher with a stipend to do this because he has the
good-
ability.
It's a good question.
So
Mhm.
then we would have to post the position if we're hiring.
Well, except for that, right now, we're not posting externally. We're only posting internally because we're on a hiring freeze,
Right.
which I'm not debating that.
It, just to jump backwards, a stipend used to be a quarter or a semester. It was never in the old days
Long-term.
carried over.
Right,
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. It
Right.
was just, it was picking
Right.
up like you needed them to do something for a semester, so they got a stipend for it.
Right.
Rarely ever did we do stipends. This is kind of new to me that.
Right.
It's even in there that way.
It's evolved to this point. and
Yeah,
that's the
you
practice.
it's a way to put it.
Yeah, we're trying to get away from that. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's created a big mess for us.
Yes, very much so.
Yes. Yes.
So then there's that question. Do we,
I don't know. I would have to probably reach out to the union and see what they would say. You know, they may ask that we at least post it in-house. You know, and sometimes unions can be persnickety on that. But I don't know. I don't know what they would say. But I would say they would be the definitive organization that would determine if we post something like that or not. You know, because they want to make sure that their membership has equal opportunities.
Yeah.
You know,
well, and that's why I'm asking, because it just seems, I mean, when you do a stipend, it's like you said, it's a part-time, you're filling
Right,
this.
right.
It's not a full-time position or even hired as a,
Right.
part-time for the whole year position.
That's going back to the caveman days. It's evolved to a monster.
It has, a big green one too.
It's,
I like where you're going with the stipend conversation. If it shouldn't have do,
if it's more
is
than.
it should be,
if
should it
it's-
be a quarter or a
Yes.
semester, or is it something that it's a year? And then if it's a year, how is it evaluated every year? Because as
I
new people
agree.
come in, are there other opportunities for
I
that?
never, ever,
Mhm.
did we ever approve a stipend for a year.
Yeah, it just seems.
That's pretty much
Right.
just class time.
Well, that was normal for my experience on the
No,
board.
I know.
right.
So
That's-
I have a question here. Is this,
Bonuses.
this position that we've been talking about, we're not going to name names, but it's been a part-time technical position for years, not just the recently. It's been for several years now.
I don't know the history of that because I know
It has
there
been.
was other
I can
names
tell you
involved.
it has been.
Okay,
Since we started getting more electronic and
Mhm.
computers and stuff
Mhm.
like that, it has been. So has it been a stipend all that time?
Mhm.
well, I shouldn't say all that time because I've only been here since last March. As long as
Well-
I've been here, yes.
I believe that before my time it was a stipend.
Was it?
So, like, Lynn Cowdery was for a while, and Kristen Fitton. So, as far as I know, through that whole time. it was a stipend.
Define intervention back there.
Yeah. Well,
No, I-
We
I
heard a
like it.
voice.
No.
so it's more of a matter of how we pay that position, not that it's a new position.
But I think your point
Exactly.
is well taken, that technology needs for districts has grown exponentially in 20, 30 years. I used to be a technology coordinator for an entire district and it was just a little bit after school here and there.
Mhm.
Apple IIe computers with
I was
floppy
gonna say,
disks.
answering
Well,
phones.
You know?
when we went through all the COVID and the big boom, that's when they decided to add the additional technology position.
Mhm.
Yeah, now technology is highly technical, very complicated.
But I think to Deb's point, with this and then discussing changes for employees and where they land and how the salary schedule works. But, okay, here, I have another one to throw at you. Usually when you do an HR reset and you move people around, their job isn't at risk. So that's that stipend is part of the job that that employee does. So can you get follow up on that, the legality of like, do you have to post for a position like this when you remove a stipend, but they continue to do the job duties that are in a salary schedule? Because,
I would need to consult with the union,
Right.
how they would look
or
at it.
yeah,
Yeah.
union, whoever the magic ticket is on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I like where you're going, and I like that we're looking at making sure that we're posting positions and things like that.
Well, because we're trying to get away from stipends. So if it's a stipend, then if it's not gonna be a stipend, then it's a position.
Right.
So,
Usually it's actually, there's actual language in the CBA. And
Okay.
we don't have that right now, but I would still want to know the union's position on that, because we don't want to attract a grievance or a ULP or, you know, we want to have good relations.
Maybe
Really?
the next language and stuff we bring in much smaller forms. Just saying.
I just don't want to get in a position where we're upsetting, like you said, getting ourselves into a grievance or something. Not that we would, but when you have someone that's doing a job, they did it well, we tried to do something else, it didn't happen so well, and now we're back to that position working well. Why
Mhm.
would
Oh,
you
please.
upset the apple cart?
That's the other
Yeah.
side of the coin. But at the same time, my experience with that is, you know, a good administrator will have a good feel for the employee group, where the talent bases lie. Sometimes you find a surprise that you didn't know until you open up that position. And the person applies and you look at the resume and go, oh, I didn't know this. You know, so I hear exactly what you're saying. Why upset the apple cart if it's already working well? But could it be working better for the district potentially? That's kind of the art of personnel.
So I have one group I would like to discuss with everybody as we look at salary ranges. The family outreach
Mhm.
position, there's two, there's one and a two.
Uh-huh.
Two is based on AA equivalents. These are staff that absolutely help our student population and family population.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do feel like they are, this is, I mean, we're paying them more than the people that are helping the students again. So I'm wondering if we can bring that scale to a more reasonable level that's closer to an IA one, honestly, is my thought, because that's still above the pace. It's still within the range. But I think there, I mean, there's, and I don't know about a level one for a family outreach. What's your job? I'll be curious to see what the job description is. I can go look right now, but I know there's education that goes into the IA2 component of things. And classes and things that they can do for that. And is it certification that they, when they're helping in like title and RTI?
Yeah. Mhm.
So for the family outreach to make more than that, I don't feel like that looks balanced to me.
Keep in mind that I would suggest that you do read the job description, because family outreach not only usually carries certifications themselves, but they also deal with a lot of different agencies, nonprofit agencies, grant writing, you know, county programs, city programs, all designed to try and help our most risky kids.
Mhm.
And so that was the comparison that we saw out there, was that, and I'm trying to bring it up right here. The comparisons were quite high on that.
The comparisons that I see next to the family outreach is 1355 to 32.
Mhm.
And then for family outreach 2 is a 24 to 32.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, I do understand the 2 comes with a AA or an equivalent with like a social worker. I don't know what HHS stands for, but
I need to look it up too. I've
probably
forgotten
human
what
health
that is.
services, honestly.
Yeah, it's something in a related field.
Mhm.
So it's either a AA degree or the equivalent of that certification. I need to look up
Right.
what that stands for again.
So I can understand where that, because of that requirement held in that position.
Mhm.
A brings up the pay a little bit higher.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, we did see one comparison as I look at the data here from Lincoln County ranged from 1576 to 1956. And that would be compared to the Family Outreach 1. We did not see any comparisons with the Family Outreach 2.
So is this comparison value here, the 24 to 32, just a percentage increase from the one?
Can't remember how our consultant got the 24. That's what I'm trying to figure out here. I think she had some familiarity with some of these programs. I would have to go back and ask her. So is the board wanting me to make an adjustment there? Because you have the 3% that you're looking at right now, and then the next page. 12 has the 2%. 12 and 13. The 2%, the Family Outreach one goes from $17 to $20.60. And the Family Outreach 2 goes from $24 up to $28.68.
I will not speak for the board. I would like to see it lowered.
You'd like to see what?
I'd like to see the Family Outreach 1. I'm looking for the job description right now to see if there's
And 2?
certifications. Well, I want to see the 1 first, because I want to see what certifications are in the job description.
HHS is probably Health and Human Services.
But that's for the 2,
Right.
So what's a S and W?
social worker.
Okay.
It's an equivalent of an AA degree.
So are you working on getting the, is it job qualifications?
I'm trying to find it, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, HHS is Health and Human Services. Let's see.
So all the job descriptions come out in the emails in 12/7. So it would not be, it would be this one maybe?
Oh, I have it. It's on Google Drive.
It's on Google Drive.
Oh, I don't
You
know
got-
where to drive from there, but
It
I'm
got-
not going there.
Okay. Qualifications and performance expectations. Your skills, prior successful experience. So CPR, first aid, and then education and or experience is high school diploma or equivalent.
It should say AA degree.
But I'm looking at the 1.
Oh,
I'm
you're
not
looking at one.
the 2. I'm looking at the 1.
Oh,
That is the one I have in question, actually. I'm
you're questioning the
I'm
one.
thinking that I would like to see the 1 move back,
Okay,
not the 2.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
so the one, one of their qualifications is to be working within the confines of the McKinney-Vento. That's a federal law
Mhm.
that governs our homeless children. And so they would have to know that skill set. And there's reports that they would have to generate. There's funding streams they would have to be a part of with the business manager. They would also be working with different social service agencies. They'd be working in highly confidential environments. So, you know, there's if you read this through, there's quite a few job skills. But if the board is wanting to see that Family Outreach 1, is the 2% what you're thinking of, or are you wanting to see even less than that?
No, so I'd like to, my opinion personally is that the Family Outreach 1 should probably live on a salary schedule between an IA1 and an IA2 for starting to completion. They're classified staff, so they'd sit at that 3%. If we went with that option, they'd sit at that 3% step.
So
Or
start, so
increase.
start them lower then.
So I would start them between that 15 and 1650, so somewhere
Okay.
between there.
So I'm looking at the qualifications for outreach too, and I don't see. Let's see the responsibilities, position description.
So
And
you-
then the qualification just says to perform this job successfully. I don't really see where it needs any kind of degree.
yeah, if you look in the top paragraph, last sentence,
Under education and experience also it does,
Oh, it does up there.
it does
Yeah.
denote an AA. Or experience that would be equivalent to that, which is usually time-based.
But to me, it just seems like the position starting at 24 seems high.
What is the comparison between step 10 on the 1 and step 1 on the 2? Does that make sense?
2250 to 24.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to get at is if we lower the range for the Family Outreach 1, then the percentage increase from a step 10-1 to a step 1 on a 2 would be the same percentage. So you would adjust it at that same percentage level.
Mhm.
So it would bring the 2 down also.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
And then their step increases at the 3%.
okay.
Are there actually, on that same conversation point, are there other classified staff within within our school that have the requirement for AAs? For associate's degrees?
If you're working in title, you either have to have an AA or work key certifications.
Okay,
And that's why we have the IA2 qualification.
and that's a certification or
Either a
the
double A degree
Okay.
or a work key certification.
so that would make sense then if the IA2 could have the equivalent of an AA, that the Family Outreach 2 comes down a little bit to cut closer to that too with that certification piece.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, I see where you're going with it.
Can you explain also, I guess, the secretarial office positions that are held here? Can you help us understand what is different between these positions and what we have in the confidential space and all of those
Mhm.
administrative assistant positions?
The main difference with confidential is that you're dealing with like HR, that has to be confidential. You got HIPAA and FERPA and all those sorts of things. Also, confidential positions deal with a lot of your negotiations. So you're dealing with reports for the superintendent or the negotiations team. So that's the definition of confidential according to Bowley. Am I answering your question?
Yes. do we have 5 secretary positions filled with an executive board? I'm just trying to understand, like, in my brain, and that might go into the FTE conversation that happens later,
It will.
but are all of them filled today? Or does this, or are these placeholders for if we need them in the future, or we move things
Yeah,
around? I
keep in mind,
guess.
these are salaries, they are not FTE.
So can I go back to this instructional assistant, please?
Yeah.
So I was just looking up the qualifications on the instructional aid 3 and the lower 17 to 22, but they require an AA or equivalent to a 2-year college, technical school, or pass a district development assessment on the job description.
Well, let me look then. All we did was put the IA3s as the people that work with SPED. And that does not require a AA degree.
Well, I'm reading its description right here and under special qualifications. If a school is
Yeah.
targeted as assistance Title I school
Oh,
positions is
yes.
funded. When Title I funds, employees must meet highly qualified requirements under
Yes.
the reauthorized ESEA.
Yes,
And have an associate's degree, AA, or equivalent from 2-year college or technical school. So wouldn't that also be in the same realm as the outreach?
are
to-
you reading the instructional assistant 3 job description?
Yes, I am,
Okay,
down at the bottom.
so the key component there is the target is assisted in terms of title. Title's the requirement for that AA degree or the
Mhm.
work key certification.
But wouldn't that pay for that person, that position, not person, be equivalent to the family outreach too? Because they have to have an AA also.
Good.
Do you see what I'm saying? Because see, if
Mhm.
you look at the 3, it starts at 17 and goes to 22.
Uh-huh.
And the family outreach 2, which is requiring the same AA, is 24 to 31.
Uh-huh.
So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me if they have to have an AA also.
Well, it's usually priced at the different type of work that is going on. But we can make them the same if that's what you want to see.
Well, I mean, comparing apples to apples, you have an AA in this one, you have an AA in this,
Yeah,
kind
and
of doing the same thing, just different.
in terms of qualifications,
Yeah.
yes, but the job is going to be completely different.
I'm sorry, I just have to comment. For the person that does that job, the family outreach, they have to be savvy enough to talk to outside organizations. And so that's probably where a big difference in job responsibilities for an instructional assistant who just has to deal with staff mostly
Okay,
within the building. The outreach is outreach, so it means lots of different organizations and agencies.
thank you. Nope,
No,
appreciate your knowledge.
we haven't shut down public comment yet tonight, so we're not gonna start. mid-cycle.
This is a work session. We're all working together.
Well, so with that, then do we look at putting the one, a range that's closer to the IA2 and then going from there? Because IA2 has to have that certification or AA also. But the one to that point, the one for the family outreach has to do that work that I guess, self-driven work, that they have to go out and find that. If that makes sense.
Consistently, if you look at comparisons, because we do have a lot of special ed assistant comparisons,
Mhm.
it is a much lower salaried position than your family outreach. I'm going to defer to our comment here. I think that was a good description. There is an inherent difference between those positions, even though the qualifications might be the same.
I just was looking at the qualifications is all.
Well, no, I mean, this is all good stuff because as this has been released and chewed on and chewed on and chewed on, people come up to me and say, well, have you looked at this? And a lot of times I'll say, ooh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. So no, this is good. We want to be thorough on this. So just for clarification, what are you wanting me to do between instructional assistant 3 and family outreach 2? Are you wanting them more aligned? You want me to just leave them as is? What would you like to see there?
Well, I don't know. Listening to what she said, that makes sense.
I mean, it seems like it's starting a touch high, but definitely more than an instructional 3, just because of.
Just the nature of the job, yeah.
So that makes more sense to me.
Are we discussing the 1 or the 2 at this point? Or are we discussing both? of
We're
them? Sorry.
discussing the IA3
Yeah,
versus the outreach 2. So when I was reading the qualifications on the job descriptions,
Mhm.
they both require an AA, so I was questioning why the pay scale was so different.
Why is there a difference?
so my,
Instructional assistant 2 also requires an AA or
Right,
a test, so that's also a thing. Then.
right. That's why,
All 3 of
that's,
them require that AA, that's, I mean, like the outreach, yeah, they do have to deal with community members and whatever, but they all require an AA.
that's why I was asking why the difference was so,
Yeah.
I mean, because it goes from 17 starting and IA3 to a 24 IA2. So that's, $7 an hour difference.
Want me to
So-
close up that gap?
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking, if you're requiring an AA, which is education, I mean, granted, the outreach has to work with other people, other organizations outside our school,
Mhm.
but they're still requiring the education.
So to close up the gap, do you want me to increase the IA salary or
IA3,
decrease the family outreach?
well, if you're decreasing outreach 1, which is bringing outreach 2 down, maybe that closes that gap enough.
Good.
So that's what I was just looking at that
Mhm.
gap, because otherwise I feel that we need to bring the IA3 up a little to not match the family outreach to, but,
Mhm.
maybe give that gap a little smaller space.
Yeah, I could do that.
I guess I'd have to see it after you adjust the
Sure.
salary
Yeah,
scales
I can do
for that.
so what are you adjusting? Sorry,
Um,
I'm going back.
I'm closing the gap between instructional assistant 3 and family outreach 2. And
Okay.
just based upon the conversation, I think if I kind of just squeezed it both directions, just make them closer,
Mhm.
it
Well-
might accomplish what you wanted to see.
So do we want to see, so I guess, are we looking at taking the starting point of a family outreach 2 to a lesser amount than the ending point of a 1 then? Is that what that's looking like?
If
'Cause I
that's what
thought-
you want me to do.
I think that that's a really horrible strategic move.
So what you had said earlier was to
I think It's a
adjust
really
the
bad move.
the family outreach 1, adjust it.
Yeah, so I had said to adjust, so I was thinking to adjust the family outreach 1 to be starting between somewhere between the IA1 and the IA2 starting
Correct.
range.
Yep.
And then follow that 3% step to the step 10.
Yep.
And then whatever that percentage increase is for a 1 at a step 10 to a 1 at a step 2.
Correct.
Adjust that so that this family outreach column was comparable within the steps, but I mean, I would like to see what it looks like compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
To see where that is, but what I don't want to see is we're comparing that family outreach to the IA1 because their job roles are so totally different. The certification pieces are a good point of compensation, but the roles that they do for the school are so totally different.
Right. But
So,
what I was asking was the instructional assistant 3
mhm,
and the outreach 2
mhm.
both require, yes, they have different roles, but they both require an AA degree
Right.
or something equivalent.
Yes.
So what my question was, why is there $7 an hour difference?
Some different jobs that they do.
Well, but $7, that to me is a really big gap. And I was asking if we adjust the family outreach 1, which adjusts the outreach 2, does that close that
Yeah,
gap a
that's
little
what I-
bit? That's what I was.
Okay.
Because I really feel that if you've got an IA3 that is requiring a higher education, then you should get compensated a little bit more than, I mean, because 50 cents from an instructional 2 to an instructional 3, when you're required to have an AA, doesn't
Is it
make
the same though?
sense. What?
The same qualifications?
No, the 2 doesn't have to have an AA. Oh,
Yeah.
you do?
To do,
So,
Or
So then you're only
certification, yeah.
going from 15 and IA 15 to an associate's $1.50 to another qualification, it's another 50 cents. So that to me just doesn't make a lot of sense, $2 difference. For an AA, when you're going down here to the
I
family
get you.
outreach
I see what you're
1
saying
to
now.
the family outreach 2, which is a $7 difference.
I hear what you're saying.
so you
now.
want to close the gap.
Just
Yep.
an adjustment in all of them, I think.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't,
What's the difference between an IA2 and an IA3?
that's what I want.
well, here, let's, I got this out.
The IA3 is the sped.
IA3 is a sped.
So why is that different?
That's what we consistently saw in different districts was the IA3s that work with the sped kids were at a
So
higher
just
rate,
any kid on IEP, or are we talking life skills?
life skills.
Okay, life skills.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have been more specific.
So where we put that, so where we put instructional assistant 2 title intervention, can we also add that instructional assistant 3 life skills? Can we
Yes.
Throw that in
Mhm.
there so that there's actually some delineation to,
And I'll make sure it's reflected in the job description too.
Some schools do it the same, and they just add a differential for the hours that are doing life skills.
Yes. It's up to the
you're
chair.
just fine. We're better for hearing from the group.
Oh, okay, well, I was just commenting that a family is on phone has to take after hour calls. And that would be a big responsibility, and then also your salaried employees have to work extra hours out beyond their time, so that's a consideration for the 2 and the 4%. They're actually putting in probably more hours for administration.
It's a very good point.
That's kind of what I was trying to say was with the difference in the jobs. Because, I mean, when you can have the same education in order to get a job, but if you have to have different job skills and classifications within that, it's different. You get paid different.
Yeah, and the requirements. The requirements piece is successful with that job.
Okay, so then that takes me back to, do we really look at giving people a 2 and a 3% or a 2 and a 4%, or do we have do we have a balanced salary schedule and then make the cuts that we need? Like,
Mhm.
do we make the cuts in person, like in FTEs, not personnel, sorry, I hate that, but in the FTE count to balance our budget in the system rather than relying on the step increases for that? And picking and choosing who gets a step increase and things like that, because
It's the bottom dollar to me.
Well,
Yeah.
I think, so I think at looking at these positions and setting these pay scales, I'm getting tired now. It's been a long day.
I know it's nice, it's almost 8
Um,
o'clock.
These schedules. And then once they're done and everybody's put in their position, then we're gonna have to look at payroll
Mhm.
and how many FTEs and
Mhm.
what position and where we need to cut.
Right.
Because
Mhm.
first we have to balance the everybody to be equal.
Right,
Mhm.
And then we've gotta.
Then we
make the-
deal with the FTE.
I agree with you. However, hear this part of what I'm trying to say, though. Regardless of where they land here, if we set a salary schedule that is 2% for admin, so anybody who supervises somebody, let's just say that, admin, that and that exempt and all that, versus our classified, they get 3%. What's the risk of like, what are we showing them in value when we say, okay, we know that we need to cut positions, but we're gonna decide ahead of time before we cut positions that we're only gonna give you 2%, and we're gonna give the rest of them 3%. When we know we're gonna have to cut positions over here for cost savings already anyways, if we build that into the salary schedule, then I don't know,
There's a higher risk of staff morale being affected.
I think so. Also, when we step away from this table, we have to feel good about that too. We do serve this community, the students and the people who work in this school. So do we want, because it's not just, we've talked about admin, but let's be real of who that is. Those are secretaries. Those are people that come in and deal with clogged toilets. Those are people that take phone calls on snowy days. Those are so much more than just, those are people that sit in board meetings and negotiations with us on a regular basis. So I guess I'd almost rather keep it at the 3% and look at the FTE piece of it, of what needs to be balanced. And look at other ways of, we're working so hard on making so many different
Right.
changes in the district to save us money too. Is that 1% worth telling somebody they're not worth that, I guess?
I guess if you look at it that
The-
way.
The bottom line is we have to make it fit inside the box.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't fit inside the box, it doesn't matter what we do here.
But John also said that this is a starting point.
It's a starting point.
And if we come back and we do changes in, say, RIF or whatever,
Mhm.
and change some positions, we still can come back and adjust these things at a
Of course.
later date.
Mhm.
So to me, it's a lot better to do it. This has been a long process of getting it as even as they possibly could with the percentages. And so it seems to me, take that step and then move forward later on as we have to adjust it. Because it seems like when we piecemealed all together is when we started getting all these wacky different wages. And so you have to do it kind of all at once, all the time. And if it gets out of whack, then you readjust. Instead of messing with individual people. Does that make any sense to anybody at all?
Well, there's
Get
something to
tired.
be, there's something to be
Well,
said for consistency.
it-
And I think that's what you're
And
saying.
it
Yes.
does, because I don't think any of us want to deal with it as individual people.
No,
That's so difficult.
but the thing of it is when you start working on giving these people 4% and these people 2%
Right.
stuff, you are kind of going to the individual people thing.
Well, and
Not really.
We're trying really hard to stay away from the individual piece
Yeah,
of it.
because when I think about
But-
this and the increase, I don't think of it as, who's in that position. I think about, the positions that are overall versus the positions that are in the classrooms that are dealing with the kids every day on a day-to-day basis. And so it wasn't, who's an admin or who's in the classroom, it's their position. It's the position, not their position. And so that's what I was looking at was, I just from my own personal experience, somebody being, working with Gage on a day-to-day basis versus an admin that's watching that person work with Gage. That's how my mind was thinking about it.
that's true.
Because I know that position is tough.
Well, and the next hard part is we're gonna go through a new superintendent.
Mhm.
If we don't move forward and get things in order and we bring in a new superintendent, that's another 6 months, and I'm not sure we can survive another 6 months the way we're going.
Mm-mm.
I don't need to.
That's a lot of money every month.
I agree with you.
So
100%.
so that's the part that concerns me is this is
I
This
know this
just
is really
sucks.
a hard decision that we've been going through for a long time, but we just keep going back and grabbing something and pulling it forward and going again, and we have to stop.
Yes, we have to, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if we have to readjust later, we have to readjust later. That's the way I'm looking at it, because it just doesn't get better as we spend more time and more months and get closer. And there's gonna be a big adjustment, because you don't know who's gonna fill the board position. He's gonna be gone.
Absolutely.
And it could totally change. And if you start taking out people and stuff before that, you're gonna have a big change in the school that we may not survive.
Absolutely.
There's that. I hope whoever fills the seats that are coming open is, just as happy to look out for our kids as we are. So, I mean, that's what I hope.
And equally qualified.
And what did you say? I can't hear.
Equally qualified.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be a process. You bring in someone new, if we don't have this done, it's such a process for them. Sean
To
can
catch up.
probably tell you, you're not gonna come in and know what's going on. It's gonna take months to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, look how long we've been working at it.
And you have new board members, and Christine knows, you all
Yes.
know that it takes months to start really getting back into it, even if you've been in the position before.
Yep.
Because things change all the time. Things have changed so much from when I started almost 8 years ago to now. And you don't want to put that whole gap all at once in one pancake, June 30th.
Right.
So what direction do you want me to go? Do you want me to leave as is and we try to move forward? Do you want me to make these adjustments that we kind of outlined tonight? What is the board's wishes for me, giving me some direction?
Well, first and foremost, in my personal opinion, I think we need to close this gap with the IAs and the family outreach a little bit.
I can do that.
That, I mean, I just think it needs to be a little more, I mean, $7 is a pretty big gap.
You're talking between the 1 and the 2, right?
Two
Family
and
outreach, 1,
2 and
family
3.
outreach. 2.
Correct, yes. And I'd like to see, I mean, because yes, they all have to have an AA, but I'd like to see that gap close just a little bit. I think that's a really large gap.
Okay. What about the rest of it where you said 4% for these people, 2% for those?
Yeah, we
That
did, we
group.
talked about 2 and 4%.
Want me to implement that? Do you want me to not implement that?
At this
I
time.
see
oh,
3% and leave it at what it is.
I do too.
That's, I mean, that's what one of the, that's what one of the options is on here at
Right.
least, but
I'm fine with
that comes down to the vote for Thursday
Yes.
on what we vote to approve.
But he's asking if you want to make a schedule for us to be able to look at before we make that vote. I think.
To what, a 4% schedule for classified staff.
A 2 to a 4.
Just to look at in comparison to what we have on this piece of paper here.
I could add a 4% for classified, so you can
Yeah.
look at it.
I would like to, it's all in a table, right? So it makes
Oh,
it
yeah.
pretty easy.
Yeah,
to-
easy, easy.
So I would like to see that,
So just basically
just
redo it
to
and
look
drag
at
and
it.
drop.
But it doesn't mean that that will be part of the
No.
information. It's just
It's
It's an
just,
option
something we
to
could
vote on.
do.
yeah,
We could look at it. Instead of just talking about it, you could see that.
I would like to see that.
okay. So I'm hearing, keep the 3% steps and the 2% steps as is for the whole packet, but add the 4% step increase for the classified.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I can do that.
And so when we go to implement that, we would make a decision between 2, 3, and 4%.
Yes, yes.
On those things.
Mhm.
Are we, are we still open to either options around freezing pay, a limit on the decrease in salary, and if they're red circled or at the top of their step, no cost of living, or no, are we still open to that, or are we saying scratch that proposal, let's do this and then battle that from there?
Let's do that in battle letter. I think. Let's just do
Well-
that and then we can then we can see what we got left to play with. Because if you go certain ways, you're gonna lay more people off.
Mhm,
It's just how it works.
mhm. It
I-
is.
I would like to see the idea, of maybe discuss a little bit more about if your salary decreased by 15%, maybe not that all at one hit and maybe at,
I don't think we have anybody in that classification, but I'd have to look. Would have to crunch some numbers.
but even if we don't, I mean, what if in some adjustment we do? I mean, I don't know.
Just a weird question, but since Sean has already gone and adjusted some of these positions, because haven't you done that? You've gone through and adjusted, added more or less money to some of these positions, and then if you go back and start adding an additional adjustment to it, it kind of makes it a whole lot more complex.
You have to be careful and not unbalance what you're trying to balance.
Yeah.
So yes, there is certain limits.
So will we need to go back to doing this? Simplifying this into balance and like you said, fighting the battle with it. Right?
That's where I really feel like we're at, because every month we're losing money that we're going to have to give back. And that's the bottom line.
Guess that's where we're at.
Okay, I appreciate the discussion and that gives me some clear guidance. And I'll create version 4 and we'll see you on Thursday.
I still would like, I guess, I'm sorry, I still want to see what it looks like with that decrease of
Okay.
6%. I just feel like for I want to be careful on who we cut off at the knees because
Right.
of the people who do work in our classrooms or the admins or things like that, because their work is important.
Yeah, I can check on that.
I think we need to, I would like to, again, we have to reduce, and the salary schedule would still be reduced. It's that the individual contributor wouldn't be
Harmed as
harmed
much.
as much.
Mhm, I could look. I'll see.
They
I'll
may
do
have to
some-
stay there for 15 years because
I'll do
of
some
where they're at,
calculations.
but if we also look at keeping things going in the positive format that they're going today, where the morale is getting better, people are able to communicate, people are, focused on the students and not the drama that has encompassed us for so long. I like to keep that morale moving forward.
I agree with that.
So I'd still like to at least hear that option. If the board votes not to accept that, that's, I think, the board will leave that vote at the table.
Mhm. I agree.
I can look at those.
Okay.
To the best of my ability.
I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Okay, before we just walk out of the room, are we done with our discussion?
I think that we're muddling.
I think so.
Are our brains tired?
Yes, they are.
All right, let me get to the right agenda packet. Ryan, do you have anything? I'm just gonna really quick. Anything extra? Robert gets an award for as much
Awfully
as he
quiet
spoke
tonight.
tonight.
I know he does, huh?
I'm
It's
sorry, I
really
cannot
hard.
find the right one, you guys.
It's really tough.
It should just be an adjourn.
It is just an adjourn at 20:04. We will see you all on Thursday at 7 PM.
I thought we were doing an exec session.
Open session is 7 PM. Sorry, for the community.
But exec